Hi, Kate.
Hi, Michelle. I am so happy to meet you.
Yes, same to you.
Oh my goodness. I just understand that we have some things in common and we have certainly some big ideas to talk about. So I'm just thrilled to meet you.
Yes, I spoke really highly of you, of course. And so I was like, okay, well, let me get on the line. Let's have this conversation and connect.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So my name is Cate Steel and I live in East Lyme, Connecticut. We've lived here for about 26 years. We moved here from Nebraska originally. And I'm running for state rep for the 37th district, which is East Lyme and Salem. So I've been doing these conversations with different people just to understand different perspectives. And I know you don't live here, but I know you have a wealth of knowledge and information. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. Now, Michelle, and I love your name, by the way, Michelle Blue. I just
You, I'm obsessed with it too. So like you and I.
so I thought maybe Blue's Clues would be a good. So you probably have all kinds of.
Yes, you hit it right on the head. That is exactly. I'd say I give blues clues all the time around, entrepreneurship, around life, and how we're just, making it along this journey. So yes, you got it right. Blues clues.
I love it. And I have a little introduction. You're the founder and host of Journey with Blue, which is you, right? And you're an entrepreneur, public speaker, and social activist. You have a lot going on, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I do. All different hats that I am thankful that I get to wear and, things that I'm glad I get to show up as in this life and to support other people, most importantly.
Of course, absolutely. Okay, so I love the quote by Martin Luther King, if I could start out with that. And that quote is faith is taking that first step, even when you don't know the whole staircase. You know, and you don't even know that there's a second
My,
landing.
it, that like sums up my life in a nutshell for sure.
Really? And
Mhm.
I admire entrepreneurs because you just have a heart and a spirit as an entrepreneur beyond compare with most people because you're courageous. Tell me about your journey a little bit. Not your
Yeah.
journey. Oh, go ahead.
No. So I guess the connection, I believe everyone went to University of Georgia.
He did. Yes.
So
And you
I'm
did and you did too?
Yes. So I'm a University of Georgia alum. And when I was in school, I was studying business marketing with a minor in fashion merchandising. And so I
Right.
had an opportunity to go on a study abroad trip to Ghana. And, I was thinking I was just going to go to learn more about the textiles, the culture, the history. And I walked away with so much more. While I was on the trip, I met some really amazing girls that I fell in love with and really fell in love with their spirits and also their fight and tenacity for more, for a better life for themselves, for their family, for, their communities. And so I walked away from this like, oh my gosh, like, what can I do? What is my place in this? And, once you have these levels of awareness, it's up to you to figure out what you're going to do with that. And so at the time, I was just going into my junior year of college. So I was pretty young. And that also meant I didn't have like that much money as well.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that I wanted this to be more than just like a one-time donation and bigger than myself. So my best friend and I, we, put together our minds and put together our ideas and resources. And that's how we created Benet. And Benet is a luxury scarf company where we
Nice.
sponsor
How do you
tuition.
spell that?
Benet, B-N-E.
B-N-E.
B-E-N-E.
B-E-N-E. Okay. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't have a scarf on. Come on.
Oh, well, it's all about
That's just the beginning. Okay.
there's more to it. So luxury scarf company where we sponsor tuition, book supplies, and uniforms for girls in Ghana to continue their education. And
Nice.
started that when we talk about taking leaps and not knowing, where that would take you and seeing the rest of the staircase, I, took this leap full time after college. And entrepreneurship, I just knew like this was something that I wanted to do. I didn't want to just go into a corporate job because that's what was told to me. And so I decided to, to dream and to dare and bet on myself. And so I went into that. And of course, with entrepreneurship, there's no blueprint. So you are figuring it out all on your own, on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making some costly mistakes, you're failing along the way, you're making sacrifices, but there's still so much beauty along that journey as well. And so did that for several years
Okay.
and was able to grow it. We had some successes from it. We were named Mashable's Top Black-owned Businesses Changing the World, Southern Living Beauty Awards.
Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. Went back to Ghana to celebrate the graduation of the girls. I started the business to support, did a TED Talk. So all of these things was able to, to do this work, which I'm super thankful for. And actually, I guess 3 years ago, we ended up transitioning out of the business, which was a huge, I won't say fiasco, but a huge ordeal. So we were doing our silk printing overseas. And long story short, our manufacturer cheated us out of a significant amount of our fabric, which was almost $50,000 of projected revenues.
Hey, how
And
much?
almost $40,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, that was a great learning lesson for us. And yeah, it taught us so much, but kind of transitioned out of that, and now am the creator and host of The Journey with Blue, which is a talk show all around creating the life and business of your dreams. And now I get the opportunity to coach other people to step into their highest potential, to choose extraordinary over ordinary, right? To start, making those steps on that staircase and towards their abundant life that they've always envisioned.
That's lovely. I love that. And how many, well, let's back up. If you have clients and you begin and they come in and they have a dream, so you didn't necessarily have a plan in place. You had some resources and an idea. And then from that, you were able to generate and then bring some things forward. How is it with the clients? How do you foster them to bring forth what they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much deeper. And I think so many times when we think about entrepreneurship, we immediately just want to go into the conversations about sales and strategy and marketing. And I'm like, that's really great, but I think that's all very topical work,
Right.
compared to inner work you have to do. So it's very much a mental process, checking some of those negative and limiting beliefs. So shifting your mentality and some of the limiting paradigms that you have. It's a personal development journey. It's a spiritual journey as well, and tapping into self and realizing your own inner power. So last night I did a workshop for the University of Georgia. We had almost like 400 people that signed up for the event. And
Wonderful.
yeah, and so I was doing that conversation and workshop on the power of you. And in that, I walk through the 5 different steps you need to take that help you step into the life and business of your dreams.
Nice. Okay. So that was a pretty powerful presentation. And what are some of the takeaways that I could have in that journey of what you might tell people?
Yeah, so and for people who are interested, I also have a free workbook. So if you want to do this work, while we're all on pause, the pseudo pause of life, now
Right.
to ask yourself these questions, to do this work, to really dive within. So step one, I always say, check your negative and limiting beliefs and
Hmm.
see what is it that you're telling yourself. We all are familiar with the quote, as a man thinketh, so he is.
Right.
And so our thoughts are literally, um, are shaping our reality, are shaping our world. And if you can alter your thoughts, then you can also shift, your atmosphere. So that starting there, so checking those negative and limiting beliefs, and then countering them with positive and reaffirming words. That's very key. Okay.
Absolutely. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So
And the thing,
go ahead.
we are so hard on ourselves, all of us, and so I also like to help people uncover some of, their truths and greatness and things that they've already created. So helping people realize that and step into that power. Step two is getting clarity on what you want. And I think, a lot of times it seems so simple, but it's getting clarity on what you want. And then secondly, committing to that, and committing to it, not based off of circumstances or not based off of considerations or what you've done before, or what you think is possible. Is committing to it solely off of what you want and dreaming with no bounds and no limits. So that would be step two. And then,
Perfect.
yes. And then step three is, I think this is such a powerful quote from Mark Twain. He says, the two most important days of a man's life is the day he was born and the day he finds out why. And,
Mm,
that is so great. And even, we're familiar with Simon Sinek's TED Talks, Start With Why. And I think that's a very important place for us to have a deep understanding on. So I always say we dig deep and we ask why, why, why. And
right.
so figuring out what is your purpose, and a lot of times like you have to sit with it and allow it to emotionally strike a chord, like usually whatever that like tender soft spot that like hits your soul, that's typically your why. So digging deep and understanding what your why is, because that's super imperative when life, doesn't always give you what you expect, right? And so understanding that when the no's seem a lot greater than the yeses, when, those contracts and those opportunities are not coming through, when that the money hasn't hit your bank account yet, that why is going to ground you despite the situation and despite the circumstances that are around you. So that's really important work to do.
Well, I love that. It's kind of like when you hit the bump in the road or whatever happens that might slow you down. You're just like, it's just the fabric of life. And that's what we deal with. And that's how we move on and become successful, not
It
letting
is
little things get in our way.
right. And so my thing is, are you going to allow these things to define you? Are you going to allow these things to create your story and write your narrative? And so for me, I choose not to. And so I assist other people in that as well. And then, the fourth step is, I feel like I say I love this step because I love all of the steps. I think all of them are so needed. But the fourth step is, who do you need to be? And this is a paradigm shift because so many times we society kind of teaches us to think about all the things we need to do in order to have the things that we want to have, right?
Right.
And so that is just kind of our thinking. That's our construct. That's how we move about life. But truthfully, we have that all wrong. We should be asking ourselves and thinking about it as, who do I need to be in order to do the things I need to do, to have the things I want to have, and to ultimately give the things that I want to give in this life and in this world. And so you have to question and ask, like, what ways of being are going to serve me? What character traits are going to serve me in order to step up and step into the next level of life? And so, do you need to be bold? Do you need to be disciplined? Do you need to be a leader? Do you need to be connected? Do you need to be loving? Do you need to be courageous? And
I'll say
figure out
yes to all those things.
all of so for I always, I have my list of things that, kind of guide me. And even in those moments when I don't feel like I am that bold leader or whatever the case may be, again, this is my reminder that I am. So, getting clarity on who you need to be, what ways of being are going to serve you, is going to help you step into the next level instead of waiting for the success and things to validate you. You know, that's not how it happens. You have to show up as that person first, and everything else will follow.
Well, I love that you said the why, like the why is just so important. Like right now I'm running for state rep for the 37th district, which is East Lyme and Salem. And I want to do it because I want to make a difference. And right now you see what's happening with COVID-19 and the social injustices that are going on. And we need to address the problems that are local in our community and help people to have better lives and better outcomes.
For
And
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. And those are great whys to have, you know, and continue to ask yourself, like, why do those issues matter to me? You know, why is it important for me to be a stand for transformation in these areas? You know, so
Absolutely. Yeah, you can see that. Yeah.
yep, that's all important questions to ask.
Oh,
And to, and then the fifth step is, you know, is jumping, is taking action. A lot of times you can plan, but if you don't act, then, you know, what do you have? You just have really great journals and really great ideas, but you actually have to take that step. Like you say, you have to start stepping on that stairwell, even if you can't see the rest of the staircase. And so I help guide people and hold people accountable and to their highest potential in that as well.
very nice. I like that. So when somebody starts and they just jump in, like I have a new thing that I've been saying is like show up, stand up, and speak up. And then I had a friend just tell me today, well, follow through. You should add that, like follow through as well. But part of me is just like, if you just show up, the energy builds with inside of you and you know what's right and wrong and you start to do the right thing is kind of how I feel. And I start to say, this needs to be changed or this needs to be different or we can do this. So it kind of just makes me a better person by being aware and being out there and listening to constituents basically.
And even in entrepreneurship, showing up is half the battle, you know, because so many people are afraid and so many people are, you know, not willing to step out of their comfort zones and get the things that they really want. So for you to make the decision to say, yes, I am going to show up, I am going to do this, then that automatically puts you at a different level than majority of people, unfortunately.
Well, and then it might be like you when you first started out where maybe you fail and or not fail, I wouldn't say fail, but you learned from your lesson and then you reinvented yourself. But it's like at least you got started and you learn along the way and there's going to be all this opportunity with everybody that you interact with, so it makes you and the other people a better person, I would guess.
For sure. I mean, you don't have all the answers on this side of things. You have to start, you know, making those steps, start walking towards your goal and your vision. And from there, that's when you start realizing, oh, this works, this doesn't work. I can improve here, you know, make the iterations and pivots from there. But if you are waiting for perfection, then you won't move. And so, I think that's where most people get stuck is they want to have all the answers. They want to have everything perfected with pretty with a bow on top. And that's just not the case.
Right, right. Well, I'd like to shift, if we could, a little bit to talk about what's going on in our country right now with Black Lives Matter and some of the experiences that maybe you've been having and what you've been doing in that regard.
Hmm. Yeah, so this is a very interesting time. Very interesting time. And when you think about the alignment of it all, in it kind of like this was the perfect time to happen. Unfortunately, this has been happening for centuries. You know,
Right,
this is the reality and the history of our country. This is what it was built off of, you
right.
know. And so, you know, I think Will Smith said, you know, police have not just started killing Black men. It's like now it's just recorded, you know? So there's nothing new to this story and this narrative. It's just now that we have platforms that can be amplified. But in
Mm-hmm.
specifically, it was amplified even more because we are living in a pandemic that
Right.
has majority of people at home, you know, majority of people at home not working, not able to go out to events, not able to be distracted by other things.
Right.
There's a lot of people at home and they are seeing these videos sometimes for the first time, you know, having these reality, you know, checks and these conversations for the first time. And without all these other distractions and other things, you know, to do, it forces people to sit with it. It forces people to watch it. It forces people to ask these questions. And, you know, prayerfully ask them, it makes them question how can they show up as well.
Right, right. And hopefully this will be a time of change and a platform by which we can start to analyze things in a better light and with better ideas and outcomes is what I'm hoping for.
For sure. And, you know, truthfully, it has to happen. There's no way that we can be a whole and great society when a huge percentage of our population is marginalized.
Right.
When huge,
There's no reason for it. That's just like
right.
minimizing our value, and that doesn't make any sense.
Right. So there's no such thing as a private good. If anyone in your society is hurting, then everyone in the society is hurting. And so I think once people start realizing that it's not a separate, this is not, you know, a Black Lives issue. This is about humanity. And so stop thinking about it as, you know, different groups. This is humanity, is human, you know, we just have different shades of colored skin, you know, which is
Right,
very simple for us to create all of this divisiveness.
right. I'm sorry. So you have a strong, powerful voice, and you're able to connect with a lot of people. How do you use your voice for change? Do you how do you how do you use it to make a difference? I know you do with coaching, and I know you do with public speaking. Are there other things that we can take away that, as listeners to you, that we should also be aware of things that we can do?
Yeah. I think, you know, we can all show up. And I think we all have to show up in order for real change to happen. You know, I spoke on this a couple of days ago. I said, you know, history is history. There's nothing that we can do to change that and to rewrite that. But for, you know, my friends that are not African American, like, again, this is just as much, you know, your opportunity to step up and show up as well. You know,
Well,
so
I can interrupt you right there. I kind of feel like it is our responsibility and not people of African Americans, just because I feel like it's our work that we need to do. And we've been the ones who've been given the benefit, for lack of a better word, of different experiences. And now it's like we need to figure it out because you've understood this at a much deeper, more comprehensive level. So I feel like we're really needing to come to task and have a better, greater, deeper understanding. Do you
yeah.
agree with that?
I completely agree with that. And I think that's such a great and strong point to make, is that, you know, this is not something that we created of our own, you know, doing. And
Right.
so in order for it to be undone, we have to think about the systems that were put in place to systemically um, undermine the rights of Black people. And so I think one way, you know, we can start that is first, you know, having, you know, educating yourself on this, you know.
Right.
Now there's so many people who are speaking, there's so many books, videos, things to watch so that you are understanding of American history. and what is the Black experience here in this country, which is completely different for majority of people. So having that understanding, and then again, once I say you have that awareness, then it's up to you to make a decision on how you're going to act. Right? So no decision is a decision in itself. So always remember that as well. So staying silent is a decision in this time. But one
In my
thing.
family growing up, my oldest brother used to say to me, silence implies consent.
Mhm.
And I was only 7 years old the first time I heard that, but I took it to heart for my entire life. And it's been so true, because if you see something happening and if you don't say anything, then you're complicit with the problem. So I really feel, and I always have felt, really compelled to basically speak up and, well, you know, like stand up, show up, speak up, and now follow through. So I guess this is the next step that I'm working on mostly.
Right, right. And I love that quote that that you mentioned that, because like you said, not saying anything is being complicit with the actions, right? So that means you're standing on the side in agreement with this. And so making your decision, and then I think the first place you can start is having those hard conversations. And having those hard conversations, you don't have to go far. I think you can start right where you are, right?
I agree. I agree.
Have those conversations with your spouse, have those conversations with your children, with your neighbors, your friends. Like, if you don't, then I don't know, you have to
Nothing
be.
changes. If you don't, nothing happens, right? I mean, it'll just kind of blow away, I would guess, or.
Right, right. And so there was a quote by Benjamin Franklin, and I should have had this pulled up. And so I will paraphrase, but I think he said, true change doesn't come about, and justice does not come about unless those who are unaffected are just as outraged as those who are.
Right.
And so
And that one
that,
gives me goosebumps. That one makes me think, oh, that is really strong and that's powerful.
yeah. And so that held true back in, as one of the founding fathers of this country. And it holds true very much so now in this time. So, be passionate, speak to your representatives, think about how you're voting, people that you're putting into office, into local and national positions, right? Think about the impact and the implications, yes, for yourself, but for the greater good of this country and for humanity.
Right.
So those are definitely.
We don't have much time on this planet, is what I've learned. And, I think we just really need to be careful and use our time wisely and use the resources that we have to our best ability to make a difference and to impact and to have the world more fair and equitable. I have the kind of an abundant mentality where I feel like there's enough resources for everybody.
Mhm.
We should just be able to share things at a more equitable level so that people have what they need.
Right. And that's such a great way to think about it, because there is more than enough. There shouldn't be an issue of suffering and hunger and homelessness, because there is enough food. There's not a shortage of food on this world. There's a distribution problem in this
Exactly.
world, you
Right.
know? So we think about that. But then you start questioning, well, why is this the case? If there's not a shortage, then why do these issues still plague us in society? And so I think the root of it comes to power, truthfully, is, constructs of power, and people who are in power typically don't want to give that power up.
So there again is another paradigm shift. But I think if people understand that they will have as much as they need, then maybe that's the right step towards helping them to understand that others won't be hungry, or others will be clothed, and others will be healthy as well, and to move things in a better position for everybody in the world to have. But these are
Right.
uncomfortable conversations, and
You have to have the uncomfortable conversations. But one of my friends, Elizabeth, and she's an older, I say middle-aged white woman, she was like, Michelle, she was like, we can have hard conversations. We can do hard things. And we can. And I call all of us to do those hard things now. Have those hard conversations now. Show up in environments that you may not necessarily show up in, where you are the minority, and give a helping hand, or be there to support. Be there to show love. And so, like you said, Kate, it's like, even when you don't know what to say, show up, right? And
Mm-hmm,
then
mm-hmm.
the words, it all comes to you.
It does come to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What other advice do you have, Michelle? What else? You just seem like a wealth of knowledge. So I'm really glad and thrilled that I can speak with you and hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and so also get involved. There's so many organizations that we can be participating, giving our time, giving our talents, and money to as well. So think about organizations like the NAACP, and this was actually a really, like, this hit home for me a couple weeks ago. So this was in the height of the George Floyd video being surfaced, but that evening,
Right.
you're fine. That evening, I was watching America's Got Talent, and I had never watched America's Got Talent. So this was just kind of like a fluke. And on the show, there was a an older Black man who was singing beautifully, like from the depths of his soul. And he shared his story, and he was in prison for 34 years for a
Oh,
crime that he did not commit. And he was just recently exonerated of those crimes. But the thing is, that's even more, hurtful about that story, is because first, this man's life was completely stripped from him for something he was innocent, an innocent, or he was an innocent man, didn't commit this crime. But secondly, he was exonerated based off of evidence that they already had. There was no new findings. They already had eyewitnesses that placed him at a separate location. They already had DNA that showed that he was not you know,
person
um,
perpetrated the
the
created the crime.
perpetrator.
You're right.
Correct. And so you think, like, this is one story, but there's thousands upon thousands of stories just like this, of Black men who are sitting in prison, wrongly, charged. And also thinking about it in the sense of, Black men receiving harsh sentences for marijuana charges, right?
Right.
And even now, in this time where marijuana is legal in so many states, right? Or when you also compare it to their white counterparts who have harsher drugs and receive less sentences.
Or that
So
somebody had an attorney who could pay off the
yeah.
lawyer, pay the lawyer that would get them off, so that they didn't have to serve at all. Yeah.
And I mean, just kind of from our judicial system, it is written in the law. You get more time for having marijuana, which is typically, in more underserved communities than you would find with cocaine, right? So we have a understanding of the demographics of the people that use weed and marijuana more likely than those who use cocaine. And so when you can clearly see these injustices, and how people are charged, how people are serving, time, great lengths of time, um, you know, for this, it's kind of, it's pretty obvious. It's very black and white when you think about it. And so there's programs like the Equal Justice Initiative, which I have personally supported in recent weeks, that support Black men who have been wrongly accused, and providing them with attorneys and legal support so they're exonerated and they're freed and can live their lives.
Mm. Well, that's really important work that you're doing. And I'm just thinking, since I'm campaigning right now, I've just been calling seniors in my area, and they're just so lonely. And there's just so many lonely people out there. And I'm thinking, if we could just check on each other in our society and just do wellness check. Hey, how are you today? And just find out that those are the kinds of things that we need to do, just to reach out to people more.
Yeah, and to realize that we're human.
And we are, and we're vulnerable, and we've all been marginalized. Everyone has been marginalized at some point or another. And for people of color, Black and brown people, the marginalization has been greater and longer and harder. But I think that helps everyone understand, oh, maybe that's what it's about a little bit. So I've
Yeah.
been looking at some of the policies for the school board, from some of the school boards, and just trying to see ways of getting more information into our schools and into the curriculum so that our students have a rounder, richer, wealthier knowledge of Puerto Rican history and Black history, so that when they graduate out of our programs, then they will understand. Like, I was so excited when my son went to the South and lived and loved that Georgia culture with the peaches and the peanuts. And I'd never had, what was it, fried pickles before I went to the South. So, you know, it's so rich when you can have that cultural experience and know people that are different from the ones that you grew up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
And I think some of the history does need to be reviewed again, because how we wrote it isn't necessarily, I always think it's nice when you can have real documents and have people really search in and explore and understand what it was like maybe to be a slave in Thomas Jefferson's on his plantation, that kind of thing, and to hear it from different vantage points.
Mhm. Well, one thing about history and American history specifically is that it's written from one vantage point, and so, um, and it's written from, from the authority. And so they get to choose and write this narrative and get to alter things and adjust things as they see fit, So, one thing that I've heard in conversation in recent years is that a lot of like history textbooks don't want to use the word slavery, that they're replacing it with indentured servitude,
And
right?
it was not indentured. I mean, there was, indentured servitude. They had to rip a piece of paper and one person would take half of it and the other person would take the other half of it. And then they would be able to match it up because of the cut, the indentation of the ripping. And there was no contract. It was nothing of that nature. Yeah.
Not at all. And I guess, the idea and the reality of slavery seems way too harsh to continue to share and to perpetuate. And so even shifting those little truths make a huge difference in the narrative in our history. And so I think, we should be checking these things and not altering history because it makes people uncomfortable. So I think that's something that's really important and something that we should all look into in terms of the narratives. Like, again, even Christopher Columbus, we've all have, grown up with this story of Christopher Columbus discovering the Americas. But what is discovery if people are already here?
Exactly.
What discovery if people are present? And so again, if it's written from one vantage point, then you're only going to get their perspective.
Right. And I'm on the board for Connecticut Storytelling Center, which, have you ever been to Nashville to the International Storytelling Festival in
No,
Jonesboro? Yeah, Jonesboro. And what's really nice about that is that people tell their stories. And I think that's another avenue that we should really probably try to accentuate in our world, is really having the history come from the historian. And, I love the testimony of George Floyd's brother that he did yesterday, and just talking about, $20 in 2020 in my brother's life was only worth $20. And what a crime that whole debacle was. But just helping people to record that. And there's a project that's actually going on right now in the library system where they want to have videos and pictures of people with their masked faces and protesting simultaneously during, basically it's a triple pandemic is how I look at it, with the COVID-19 and with the economic situation, and then with the racial movement that we're seeing and people coming out to attest to the wrong actions that have been going on, like you say, for so long.
yeah, the realities of slavery was ugly, you
Mm-hmm.
know, It was ugly. It persisted for 400 years. And that was kind of the foundation of this country. And so it makes a lot of people uncomfortable to face this ugly truth. And so, you know, it makes it hard for people to face these things. And someone juxtaposed this, and I thought it was really interesting when it comes to other atrocities in American history is never forget. But when it comes to slavery and the injustices of Black people, then, it's kind of, what are you all still talking about? Get over it type of situation. And we can't get over it when there was never any healing. And so I think this is the time where prayerfully real healing takes place. And yes, reparations, but I think there's a lot of reforms in every aspect of our society, in order for real healing and us to move forward as a whole country.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of work to be done. Absolutely. So it's not just policy. Well, it's so multifaceted, really. And we start to pull back the layers of the onion. There's just so much that we need to do and work that we need to do. But I think there's a nice energy now that I haven't seen before. And maybe it is because of the pandemic and we do have more time and we don't have an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
If you're quarantined in your house and there's nothing else but your house, then you can do some of the work that you've been saying, oh, I don't have time for that. Well, you're not running around, or you shouldn't be really, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So everything happens for a reason. This is all happening during a global pandemic for a reason.
hmm. I tell myself that, like, when you're ready for the lesson, the master will appear. And I don't know where that little pithy remark of wisdom came to me, but um, to me, it seems like, yes, our learning curve, our learning lesson is here right now. So
Right.
Michelle, if people wanted to avail themselves of your wisdom and knowledge, how would we go about doing that?
I love that avail themselves. So, I think we are connected via Facebook, so people can
Okay.
from my Facebook, which is Michelle Blue, my Instagram, which is the Michelle Blue, THE Michelle Michelle
Okay.
Blue color. And then you can also reach me at thejourneywithblue.com, which is my website where you can, see some of my conversations that I have with some of the leading entrepreneurs of our generation, as well as learn more about the coaching and services that I provide. So you can message me there. I'm sure you can put in the show notes my email as well and give people access to that. So I would love for you all to, connect and us continue the conversation. And prayerfully, I can support you all in your communities as well.
I think that would be great. I think that the more we have some of these conversations, the better we get, the smarter we get, and the more we can just spread that wealth. And every day I feel like maybe we'll just dig a little bit deeper and get a little bit further into a better understanding and a better place. But you have
Right.
a strong voice and you're charming and beautiful. So I wish you nothing but the best. And thank you so much for chatting with me today. And another thing that came out in talking with you, Michelle, is that it's not about the destination, is
Mm.
what I'm hearing. It's about the journey. It's about the opportunity. It's
For,
about, go ahead.
for sure, it's definitely about the journey.
Hmm. Hmm. So
I
thank you so much. Well, I hope people are in touch with you, and I hope that you just have nothing but success. Of course, maybe another little bump in the road here and there, just so that you have.
It's all good, I count it all joy. It all works together for you. So nothing goes unused in this life.
And if you ever get up north, we'd sure like to see you. Do you ever get up this way?
Well, I live in New York City.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Mhm.
So you
I am
are.
I am quarantining in Atlanta right now just because things got a little too crazy in New York, but I live in the city.
Oh, well, you should come see us sometime. We're just on the shoreline, about 2 hours from New York. Yeah.
Very nice. Very
Yeah. Okay, Michelle. Well, thank you so much.
You, I appreciate the time.
I appreciate being with you. Thank you so much.